Hello and welcome back to Colliding Worldviews, where every week we do talk about just that, worldviews that collide. Every single week I have a guest with me talking about a different subject that gets people thinking about why worldviews collide and the implications, the eternal implications of what happens to someone after they die based on what they actually believe. Yes, if Christianity is true, which we have all the evidence in the world to prove that it is, every other man-made religion, which is in contradiction to that, is automatically false. But does that mean that every single person will no longer believe those things? No. Many people believe a lie. And of course, it is our job as Christians to get the gospel out to the world and defend the historic Christian faith when necessary. Now, it's great to have with me a guest today who is boots on the ground in another country. He's not here in the West. And it's great to have that outside perspective on what is happening in other places of the world, as well as right here, and especially because many people in the West just look to the Western mainstream media as their news source. So we are a source for you to bring you what is actually happening in different places throughout the world. And of course, we don't sugarcoat anything. Today, my guest is Rami Dabas. He is a writer for Israel Today. He's been here a number of times in the past. And in this episode, we're talking about the danger of political Islam. And because we're talking about that, Rami, it's great to have you back once again.
Thank you. It's an honor and pleasure to be on your show. It's not the first time I join your show. It's an honor and pleasure to be also on Trinity channel. It's and your show is a colliding worldviews where the views collide. You have all the viewers from around the world.
Thank you so much. And yes, we are spreading throughout the world, and we are so thankful for the many people who tune in from different countries on different devices, from mobile devices through satellite, just through high-speed internet. Thank you so much. Continue to please spread the word to other people as well, letting them know that this is an unfiltered source of information when it comes to Christianity, doctrine, theology, philosophy, different worldviews. And of course, many times we talk about Islam, knowing that 1.6 billion people in the world need the gospel. They need to know it. They need to understand it. And yes, there are many Muslims who are leaving Islam every year. But if they just leave it because it's false, it doesn't do anything for their eternal salvation. They need to not leave Islam because it's false, but to come to Christianity because it is true. And the Lord Jesus Christ is who you need to look to. So today we're talking about the dangers of political Islam, because even though there are 1.6 billion people who believe the lie of Islam, we see the political aspect of Islam that keeps many people in bondage in many countries throughout the world. And of course, here in the West, we look to the UK, which has been Islamized for a number of years. We look up north to Canada, where they are a few steps ahead of the United States. We're seeing their free speech being curtailed more and more. And of course, here in America, Rami, thankfully, more and more people are finally hearing about or realizing the threat of political Islam, namely the Muslim Brotherhood and its many front groups. Of course, at the same time, there's other groups out there as well, which at the end of the day are still Muslim, and therefore they follow the Quran, they follow the Sunnah, the lifestyle example of Muhammad, the Hadith, the Seer literature. And if they are a devout Muslim doing what Muhammad said to do, that will be in conflict with Western values and with the Constitution and Bill of Rights, etc. Rami, what are the origins of political Islam?
Well, political Islam backs to Muhammad when he occupied Medina. He started with Mecca as a peaceful. That's what he promoted himself with Taqiyya. Then he came to Medina, Islamized Medina, got into power as the first Islamic politician and military leader. Of course, Muhammad was a warmonger and the first jihadi who promoted jihad and terrorism, same as we see in the modern world. That's exactly what Muslims, not all Muslims, but all terrorists are Muslims. After the death of Muhammad in 632, his successors led the Muslim community, were known as caliphs. The first three caliphs were the Umayyad, like they say, the Umayyad and the Abbasid between the 8th century and the 10th century. The Abbasid Caliphate occupied North Africa in the west and to Central Asia in the east. The occupation involved killing of non-Muslims, paying jizya, slavery to blacks, women, and Islamization of these countries. As we can see in this time, all these states almost are Islamic. That's a brief introduction. Of course, there is more, but for the origins of political Islam, and I can mention, of course, the Turkish Ottomans were occupied half of Europe and enslaved its people and turned the countries which been occupied by the Turkish Caliphate, the Ottomans, into a backward people. They only used them as for warmongering and killing and enslaving and stealing and robbery. That's an introduction for the history of political Islam, a brief introduction.
And of course, the political Islamists here in the West and people who haven't studied Islam, they just hear the mainstream media and what they talk about, and they hear about Wahhabism. Wahhabism, that is like the origin of all the issues for many people. They don't realize that Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab wasn't born until 1700s, and there are problems before the 1700s if you look to all the Islamic sources that we have available today. So if you say Wahhabism, you aren't getting back to the origin. Of course, mentioning Muhammad, that would be the origin of the Islamic worldview and what many jihadists have in mind today when they're out trying to further the cause of Islam through physical fighting. And of course, even Muslims or political Islamists in the West who do hate the West, or they hate the Bill of Rights, they hate the Constitution, they hate America, and they are patient in that they are willing to work with democracy and bring about Islamization that way. Of course, when Hassan al-Banna founded the Muslim Brotherhood, the Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, in 1928, they said, hey, Islam is meant to dominate, not to be dominated. And their goal was the same as Muhammad in that they wanted to bring the world under Sharia. Now, when we talk about these different aspects of history, Rami, when you mentioned the Abbasid Empire, the Umayyad Empire, hundreds of years after Muhammad, the Ottoman Empire, people don't think about the fact that the Ottoman Empire was the succession, or the end of the line of the succession of the caliphate that Muhammad originally established. So people think, this Islamic terrorism, this is a new thing. They think about 9/11, or they think again, they go back maybe as far as Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who again was born in the early 1700s. They don't go beyond that. But it was before that and after that the things that you talked about were still in place, because Muhammad was born in 570 according to tradition. And of course, the Ottoman Empire was still in place for a couple hundred years after Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. And there's been oppression of non-Muslims for the longest time. Of course, people don't study history as much as they should. But if you don't study history, then you are destined to either repeat it, or if nothing else, sit back and watch other people repeat it if you have studied history. Who is the founder of political Islam in the modern world?
Of course, Hassan al-Banna is the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood and the founder of political Islam in the modern world, of course, Muslim Brotherhood calls for Sharia law. Sharia law came from Quran and Sunnah. The Muslim Brotherhood is the mother lode of the global terrorism, in my opinion. We are unlikely to be successful in defeating Islamic terrorism without confronting the head of the snake. The Muslim Brotherhood is the umbrella organization from which all terrorism flows, because the Brotherhood's goal is a global Islamic rule, Islamic Sharia law. It's not coincidence that every terrorist from the same Muslim Brotherhood motivation, every terrorist from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, other terrorist groups was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. This organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, is considered as a terrorist organization in many world countries like Russia. Recently, with the effect of the Trump administration, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, even Syria, the brutal regime considers the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist state, and many other countries. It's not a coincidence that each single terrorist, many Muslims claim that the ignorance will cause Islamic terrorism, but most of the Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS terrorists, Al-Qaeda terrorists, they are doctors, lawyers, engineers, and each single one of them was a member at some period of his life in the Muslim Brotherhood.
Now, Rami, people in the West, they hear about the political Islamists. They hear more and more people, thankfully, are hearing about the Muslim Brotherhood, and they're realizing the threat that it has to the West, how Sharia is in complete contrast to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the freedoms that Americans still have, thankfully. What do you think is the reason why, when we look to the Muslim Brotherhood and the political Islamists out there who are wanting to bring the West under Sharia and are doing making a full-time effort in doing that, at the same time, people look to Saudi Arabia and how, even though they say women can drive now, people have not heard the many stipulations that are still in place with that. But they see Saudi Arabia as a country, and bin Salman talking with President Trump. They're always talking about increasing freedoms and that kind of thing. But they still see it, obviously, as an Islamic country where people who are not Muslim are oppressed. We still hear about beheadings, which happen on a weekly basis or monthly basis, if nothing else. But at the same time, Saudi Arabia has said that the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization. The UAE has said the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization. So if these different Muslim groups, political Islamists, non-political Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood, these Islamic countries all have the Islamic worldview of wanting Islam to dominate over all other religions, as the Quran says in Surah 48, Ayah 28. Why are they calling each other terrorist organizations, or why is the Muslim Brotherhood not willing to work with Saudi Arabia or other countries?
The main sponsor for the Muslim Brotherhood, from what I know, is Qatar, Turkey, and of course it has some mutual common interests with Iran. Let's take the Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Let's take Linda Sarsour for example also. Let's take Rashida Tlaib for an example. They've been attacked not by the same, of course, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, but by media which sponsored by these countries. While Linda Sarsour, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, as for an example, being sponsored and paid money by Qatar regime since it's very rich, being also promoted by the Turkish lobbyists in the United States. That's, in my opinion, I think we have to focus, let's better focus on how we can stop political Islam, because I think the Saudi Arabia, when the Iranian revolution came, they promoted Wahhabism, they promoted the Muslim Brotherhood, by that time, more than 40 years ago. In the same time, the jihadis in Afghanistan who fought against the Soviet Union, the Saudi Arabia sponsored them by that time. But now I think with bin Salman is the time for change. While Qatar currently sponsors this anti-Israel, the political Islamic state politicians, and we have in any other way to stop Qatar from sponsoring terrorism and cut their ties with Iran, also with overthrowing or at least stopping the Iranian politicians or the Iranian money from paying to the American Congress, like, for example, again, Ilhan Omar. Then we will have a deal in the United States, a deal in the Congress. I think by that time, the United States will be able to ban the Muslim Brotherhood movement even in the United States, if we stop Qatar, stop the Turkish effect and Iran.
But if the Muslim Brotherhood was considered a terrorist or was labeled a terrorist organization by the United States, what would happen to the different groups? Because when someone drives down the street and they say, okay, I know about the Muslim Brotherhood now, I'm going to be on the lookout for any signs that say Muslim Brotherhood. You're not going to see any signs that say it. They have all the different front groups out there who have the same ideology and are working from the same mindset, even though different front groups may not have any communication with each other whatsoever. But again, they have the same end goal, and they have the same mindset of the political aspect of Islam and working in a country and using its own laws and liberties against it, right?
Ideology. It's about banning the ideology, because this, for example, Qatar pays money for the Islamic politicians in the United States, not only in the United States. Let's take, for example, Ikra Khalid, the Canadian from Pakistani origin, which introduced the M103 to criminalize the free speech and make Islamophobia illegal. It's also been sponsored by these countries, by Qatar, with Turkish ties, with Iran. These countries will not pay anymore for these politicians. These will not support or sponsor their election campaigns for the parliament, for the Congress. That's, I think, in general, we have to stop the one who pays money for these politicians, the one who sponsors these politicians, because already these countries, they have a lobbies in the Congress, in each country's parliament, and they pay a lot of money to these politicians to affect the decision making and the legislation of the laws.
So do you think stopping the funding of the different groups is the one and only way to stop political Islam, or are there other ways to stop it as well?
That's a way. In my opinion, we cannot also, if I will say to ban the Islamic faith, but I don't think anyone will take me serious. We have to be realistic. We can ban the movements, the ideology. Also, the Muslim countries have to reform the Islam. That's exactly what President Trump said. They have to solve their own problems. They exporting terrorists, and they come from their countries. The USA is using their influence to affect the decision makers in the Muslim countries to reform Islam, like putting bin Salman as the king of Saudi Arabia. On its best, the jihadi and the violent scripts in Quran, because Quran, if we ban the Sunnah, but there's Quran, and Quran have the violent scripts, the violent scripts and the hate scripts, which inspires jihadi terrorists to do terrorist attacks. And this will take a time. I don't think will happen within one day or 1 month or 1 year. Another way to stop political Islam is the spreading of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's I would say as my opinion as a believer, to Muslims
That's
and
the ultimate
promote
solution.
to spreading gospel. The problem, the apostasy in most Islamic countries is banned, punished by death. But we have to promote the freedom of religion in these countries also in the same time. Promote the freedom of religion, promote human rights, and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Of course, not all who leave Islam will become Christians, but we have to modernize Islam. We have to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. We have to promote any other ideas and ideologies to Muslims. So at least they will not be motivated by the jihad scripts and the violent scripts in Quran to promote secularism, to the separating between the mosque and the state.
And something to keep in mind too, this is something that I've heard someone say before, Rami, is that we need to ban Islam. And I know there are people in the West, especially non-Christians, who don't see the Muslims here as potential Christians. I mean, I tell people, hey, you want to see mosques emptied? Go share the gospel with every person who walks inside of it. Many Muslims are just the gospel away from leaving Islam. The thing is, though, here's something that I try to convey to people when they say we just need to ban Islam. The law that bans Islam today can ban Christianity tomorrow. That's something that we need to keep in mind when we say just ban Islam. The ultimate solution isn't a political one, because yes, there's a political aspect to Islam. It's a religio-political system, a religion and political ideology combined. Except the religion's the base of the system. The politics don't influence the religion, which is the base. The religious base is what influences the politics. So that is what, of course, separates it from the different man-made religions out there, like, say, Mormonism or Jehovah's Witnesses, followed by the Watchtower. Islam has two major aspects to it. And of course, that is why it has spread so much today. That's why it spread so much in the past. It was not defensive fighting when Islam spread from Arabia into North Africa and East. That was offensive fighting, and giving people the three choices: convert, die. If you're a Jew or Christian, well, then you can pay the jizya, become a dhimmi. But Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, he has said that if Islam got rid of the apostasy law, Islam would be destroyed. What do you think about that?
That's a true statement. If the apostasy law from leaving Islam, the punishment, whether to jail, whether to by death, if this law removed, Islam will collapse. Because you said in the beginning of the episode, there are 1 billion Muslims, and I think this number is the number of Muslims is lower. They may 1 billion, but I don't think 0.6, because there are a lot of Muslims who left Islam. Many of them, or most of them, aren't recognized as non-Muslims, because when they do statistics, they don't ask people. They go for the government statistics, and the government labels anyone who born as Muslim, they label him.
And then fitra, the doctrine of fitra in Islam, is that every single person who's born is born Muslim. So it doesn't matter if you actually want to factor in just people who are born in a Muslim country are then Muslims by birth, but technically everyone is. But again, that's a whole different topic there. When we talk about political Islam, yes, we see the issues of countries that are under Sharia outside the West. Rami, what do you think people need to know, though? We only have a couple minutes left. I want to ask you about CARE, because CARE is the most well-known Muslim Brotherhood front group, or Hamas in America, throughout the U.S., offices throughout the U.S. At the same time, they are living under American laws. They have freedom to practice their religion. At the same time, many people don't know that it's not a human rights organization as they claim. They are there to with the goal of criminalizing Islamophobia, which you talk about all the time, which is what Canada is moving towards. But also, too, you see that they are sticking up for just Muslims when they are being denied in whatever way they say their freedom of religion, their freedom in general. What do you think the solution is in the West, in the United States in particular, with the different political groups that are here? Again, only a couple minutes left.
CARE is a Muslim Brotherhood organization. CARE has connection to Qatar. CARE is supporting with Qatar Linda Sarsour, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. Ilhan Omar was raising funds for Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization, not only by me, by the United States. That was a few days ago. CARE is connected to each politician in the United States which has a terrorist connections like Linda Sarsour, like Rashida Tlaib, like Ilhan Omar. All of these have connected to CARE, and all of these politicians connected to terrorist groups like Hezbollah, like Hamas, and each single terrorist. I won't be surprised if they have also connection to Al-Qaeda terrorists, because many they are connected to Muslim Brotherhood who been in the Egypt, and it's banned in Egypt, and they live in the West currently with a human rights asylum, like especially in Canada, and they are connected to each other, these organizations.
So people just need to be educated about it. Rami, you're doing a great job writing many articles, and of course you've been featured on different outlets out there who are willing to share the truth and not just sugarcoat it like many other outlets out there. At the same time, we are here to continually educate you on what is happening and the information that you need to know that is not spread by the mainstream media. Rami, again, is a writer for Israel Today magazine. If you go online, type in his name, you'll see a number of articles that he has written, and he also has some new articles that are coming out very soon. Rami, what other ways can people connect with you?
How can connect? How can they can connect
like
through
email, social media, website?
Yeah, I had a website, ramidabaz.com, but I already turned it off, the website, and shut it down. They can connect me through my email, realramidabaz89@yahoo.com, and it's my honor and pleasure to answer each question for each one.
Excellent. Rami, thank you so much for being here once again on Colliding Worldviews.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Friends, please spread this episode so other people can see it as well. People are, like I said, hearing about the Muslim Brotherhood more and more. They're learning exactly what front groups in America are affiliated with them and have the same end goal. Again, that doesn't mean that Muslims are your enemy. Muslims are the greatest victims out there. Again, if we want to go with the official number of 1.6 billion people, that's how many people need to hear the gospel, and it's our job to get that out there to them. Thank you so much for being here on Colliding Worldviews once again, and we'll see you next time.